Jackie, welcome to your hotel, the Tilden. Thanks for being on the Point podcast today. I think this is the 7th or 8th interview I've done now, and you're only the second employee of Point to do this. And, Jackie, I've gotten to know you over the past couple of years, and you've been such a huge difference maker in the Tilden's trajectory, bringing in accounts like USF locally here that really bring a vibrancy to the hotel. And I was hoping you could just start with a little bit of background on spirituality, how you came to your belief system, and how you met your boyfriend now. I know a little bit of the past, but I'd love for everyone to hear it,
Sure, thanks. Well, spirituality, that's a big one. I wasn't really raised in a particularly religious family. However, my mom put me in catechism, and I kind of latched on to that. And over the years, my understanding of God, has changed and evolved. So I honestly don't really ascribe to an organized sense of God, but more of a relationship and personal relationship sort of sense of God.
Yeah.
I believe that He has sort of shown Himself to me throughout my life. And so because of those experiences, I have no doubt that there's something bigger than me. And so I try to stay contemplative. I try to stay really engaged in that dialogue so that I feel like I can hear, what the next steps are and the next right steps are for me. And sometimes I don't listen, sometimes I don't. And I try to learn from those. But there have been times when I've really heard, what I call my gut, and I feel like that's, somebody or something pushing me into a direction that I see very clearly and have been able to make those decisions based on that feeling.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that you asked that question, to know that that's a part of your world.
Yeah.
It really makes it easier to connect with you.
Well, you are a person who, every time I see you, brings energy, and I feel like connected with, right? And part of it is, I think, that faith, and part of it is just your energy for life. You're definitely a gut person, right? You go with your gut, and I tend to be that way too. It's something I think that people struggle with to find that. A lot of people go through organized religion all their lives and aren't able to experience deep connection with others or with God, right? And it actually makes me ask more questions. I don't feel like I have more answers. But there is an ability for me to always sort of take in the peace or the energy that's out there. I've become really ecumenical in my beliefs. So whether it's Judaism, Islam, Christianity, if you boil them down to their roots, I really believe that they're all trying to deliver the same thing. The ones that I've had the most experience with are Buddhism and Christianity. They're the religions of my grandparents, and Taoism, and the ancestral worship, which comes from Confucianism. So the presence of my grandparents has always been a big influence in my life. You know, I think you're part Italian, at least from my recollection.
Half Sicilian.
And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the intersection of family and this belief system for you.
Yeah.
If there, and I'll share more about mine as well. And if you'd like me to go first, I'm happy to.
Well, I want to share a story with you. So my great-grandmother came to this country from Sicily in 1911.
Wow.
And they tried to come over one time before, but they were turned away because one of my aunts, my great aunts, had pink eye, so they wouldn't let them come. So you understand it's very, very expensive to come from Sicily to the United States. And so they had to borrow from another family that was already here to get the money to bring her family over. Now, at that time, she was one of, I believe it was at that point, 7 siblings. And when they got over here, her mother was pregnant. And they were, trying to pay off this debt to this family. And one day my great-grandmother came home. She found her mother crying. And she said, "Mama, what's the matter?" And she said, we can't pay this debt. And so the family wants to take the baby. And true story. And my great-grandmother said, no. We came over here as a family, and we're going to stay as a family. And that baby was my Aunt Rose, who's, they're all not here anymore. And they worked to pay off the debt, and the family stayed together. So, I think about that story, and I think about how altered, our lives would have been had something different happen. I'm a third-generation San Francisco native. My family has been in the restaurant business my whole life, and it's where I learned the art of hospitality. I watched my uncle be charismatic and just an amazing presence in his restaurants. And I remember saying, that's what I want to be. I believe that I was born to be of service. So, that's sort of how I really think about the blessings, that we've been given, and it's a story that when my uncle tells it, he cries every time, So.
I have a similar story. I don't know if you know it. 1949, my father was born in the Gobi Desert, and my grandfather at the time was Postmaster General of Urumqi, which is, out west, and my father was the third of his older brother, oldest sister, and 1949 marks the date that the communists won in China, and therefore my grandfather would be a targeted class by the communists. And they fled to Taiwan, keep his employment, and the decision was made, let's leave my dad with the neighbors because, it's so hard to take a baby across China. And my father cried for like 2-3 minutes when he found out this was what was going on. And so they brought him with him. Mm. And so that's my blessing too, Jackie. You know, I think about how different my life would be if he hadn't been brought along, you know. Kind of reinvigorates me every time. Here we are, I guess 70 years later. My mom's not super healthy. Probably an understatement. And I'm just trying to stay close with my brother now, you know. And I think we do have a spiritual connection. But I'd like to go back to, for you, being a kid in that family, you know, and what catechism meant to you, and a little bit about what spirituality means to you today. And I'd like to circle back a little bit to what some we talked about a minute ago about the mortuary too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sure. You know, I just had a really close connection spiritually to what I learned as God. And I remember, you know, like I said, I didn't grow up in a household that was super religious. In fact, I was really the only one that ended up going to church on a regular basis. And so I can remember teaching my sisters, okay, it's time to pray. We would have dinner and I would say grace and, you know, and so I think I just really appreciated the sense that there was something looking out for me.
Yeah.
And you know, I have to say too, I'm so grateful that I don't struggle with that, because there are people who struggle with that. And I get it. I completely understand, but I'm so glad that I don't have to struggle with that, and that I have a sense of, you know, that I'm being held, you know.
Yeah.
So for me today, you know, like I said, I feel, I do feel like I have a kind of a protective barrier of sorts. You know, at times I you know, and that I'm guided. And when I try not to control things, when I actually let go, I feel like God can do the work.
Yeah.
But when I start taking control and bringing things into my own will, I think he says, okay, it looks like you got this. I'm going to let you do it.
Right.
But the minute I say, I surrender, I can't, then amazing things happen for me.
Jackie, can you talk about, I think you do some practices of holistic health, switching gears for a minute, but, you know, this deep sense of faith that you have, I think you carry to other people sometimes too, and I'm going to get over to that, but can you talk about your holistic health practices? I think some of the things that you do are unique to you, that keep you restored as you go out into the world generating business and so forth.
Yeah. So there used to be a place, they're rebuilding it, but it was lost in one of the fires about 3 or 4 years ago, I think about 4 years ago, called Harbin Hot Springs up in Middletown. And it's a co-op resort with hot springs. Hot springs open 24 hours. They have lodging, they have a restaurant, cafe, you know, and your cell phone doesn't work up there, right? And massage services. They had a full industrial-sized kitchen where it was a vegetarian kitchen, so you couldn't cook any flesh. And so you didn't have to rely on the restaurant. You could bring your own food. And, you know, I have... It's been tough because, like I said, I haven't been able to go because they're restoring it. But there were days on end where I would go for 3 or 4 or 5 days. I would completely unplug.
Yeah.
Now, as I wait for Harbin to get back to Harbin, I have found that I spend a lot of my time on the water. I have a strong connection to the water, right? Because Harbin was all hot springs. And so I have a strong connection to the water. So I find myself just kind of going to the beach and just, letting my peripheral vision expand.
Yeah.
Because we get so caught up in our phones and our computers that we're only looking this.
Yeah.
And so to open up and, it's, just to listen to the way that the ocean,
Yeah.
So my grandfather was lost at sea, so I wonder too if sometimes I'm connected in that way. Much before I was born, I was, my mom was 9, and he was a fisherman, and he was lost at sea. Yeah.
Wow. Have you ever been to the Fisherman's Chapel?
Yes, every year. In fact, I believe it's this weekend. They do a journey out underneath the bridge, and it's for all the Italian fishermen who were lost at sea.
Yeah.
And we throw flowers, and then we go to lunch at Aliotto's. But yes, I have. My grandfather's name is actually on a plaque inside the chapel.
I've seen those plaques.
Have you? Yeah, Giacomo Orsino. Yeah.
So, do you know Al Bakari?
I don't.
He's a mentor of mine, and he was involved in one of the key people in establishing that chapel. Yeah. So when we owned the Tuscan over at Fisherman's Wharf, that was one of my visiting spots. And behind the front desk of the Tuscan was an Italian fisherman holding a Dungeness crab above the boil. And next to it, a Chinese fishing junk.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Because remember, before the Italians, it was the Chinese,
Sure.
right? Fishing there.
That's nice. Yeah.
Jackie, you've gotten a chance to be part of some of our community events here, Tenderloin, and maybe you can talk a little bit about what that means to you working here, what those people mean to you, Are there certain people that you think of right away? What does Bodecker Park mean? Just any of your thoughts around the Tenderloin, I think, is really helpful for people to hear, especially now that more and more people are being scared away by it.
Right. Right. It's the Tenderloin is a very, very vibrant neighborhood with rich history in the arts. And I think my favorite part of the Tenderloin, to be honest with you, is the Demiliac Academy. Mm-hmm. I absolutely loved working with those kids. To have a school dedicated to the children of the Tenderloin, where you have to live in the Tenderloin in order to attend that school. Small classrooms, great teachers, really is, I wish I could have had something like that.
Yeah.
School was not easy for me. And so I feel like they are really championing these kids. And it was really touching. I think about them often, actually. Yeah.
I've come to love the Tenderloin. A good amount of the Tenderloin's Asian, Chinese, Filipino, Laotian, and I really do feel home now here, after 4 years. And there's a warmth to the people here if you can get comfortable with the streetscape, which I know is asking a lot of people's nervous systems. Jackie, tell me more about when you were meeting your boyfriend in the mortuary business. How'd you get into it? How'd you stay in it? Yeah.
Sure. Well, so my boyfriend and I have actually known each other since I was 13. He was 16. He went to high school with some of the kids on my block.
Wow.
So we hadn't been in each other's lives this long. We were reconnected by a mutual friend. 3 years ago, basically almost right now, it's about 3 years ago that we started dating. And so he went to a different high school, but like I said, he knew a lot of the kids that I went to high school with because their high school closed. And so in his senior year, he went to one high school and some of the other kids went to my high school. So that's how we met, or that's how we've known each other since that long time ago. And we were, like I said, reconnected by a mutual friend. And when we met, when we were reconnected, I was working at the cemetery. And I've long had an interest in that industry, which, kind of sounds strange, but cemetery and funerals have been a sort of a ritual, for my family. The wake, the rosary, the funeral, the reception, it's all a part of the process of grief. And fortunately, most of the funerals that I have attended have been with relatives that have lived a long, full life. I've had some tragedies, some young family members and friends, unfortunately. And so I always felt like if I could hold that space for somebody in that time, like that's a gift.
Yeah.
To be able to just, it kind of stops time for a little bit when you're working with a family. You take them into an arrangement room and you kind of go through some, paperwork, which isn't always, sent, things like that. You have to go through a process to complete the funeral and the service. But there are moments when people will pause. And if you can just pause with them, I believe that that's a moment of healing for them.
Yeah.
And if you know the rhythm, right? I think there's a rhythm to that experience and that expression of grief. And you have to really be in tune with people when you feel like they're having an emotion and to not talk over it. I think that there are times, I think people tend to feel uncomfortable when other people emote. And so they try to talk over it or hand them a tissue or something to disrupt it.
Yeah.
And I don't believe in disrupting emotion.
Yeah.
I believe in letting people experience it, and it's like I said, it's a part of the healing process.
Thank you, Jackie.
Yeah.
Can you talk about? I think you are one of those rare people who is so sincere with your hospitality. And I think a lot of hospitality has to do with letting people emote and receiving actually that emotion. And so much of our hospitality in this country is about putting a hand out, serving you with some action. But there's an Eastern way of receiving people, reception, the word itself. And always my vision for the Tilden and for our other hotels is for them to become sanctuaries for visitors, in every sense of the word. Spiritually, helping people feel connected locally, helping people settle in, feel healthy, feel like they've got healthy choices around them that they can then take back home with them. Do you mind sharing any of your thoughts around that?
Do you mean as it pertains to the Tilden? Tell me more what you mean.
The hotel almost as a sanctuary.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Is that sort of how you see it in some ways, or how do you see it, Jackie?
Yeah, I think just with the atrium as you walk in, right? You come in from the street and it's not like you immediately open the door. You kind of come in, it's an invitation, right? Into the lobby. So I think that has a lot to do with the transition.
Yeah.
The transitional feeling that you get when you come out of your cab from the airport, from lost luggage or late flight, and you come into the atrium, and it's like it's the welcome before the welcome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I enjoy that. The front part of our hotel really provides a sense, a sanctuary before you come in.
Yeah.
And the lobby, again, it has such a safety to it, and an all-encompassing sort of warmth that is you can feel it. It's really palpable.
Yeah.
So I would agree with you.
Jackie, one of my last questions for you is, if you were to be remembered by one image, a picture, can you paint that picture for me?
Sure.
Yeah.
I hope I'm remembered as kind. I hope I'm remembered as generous with my spirit. I hope that I'm remembered as a compassionate person.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the things that are important to me, because at the end of the day, you can transact all you want, but when you close your eyes, and those are things that I pray for.
Yeah.
Help me be kind and compassionate. So,
Jackie, now you get to ask me anything you'd like. What would you like to ask me? And or just talk about, that maybe we touched on and you want to go back to, or anything out of the blue.
Yeah. Well, you have siblings, don't you?
Yeah. I have a younger brother, Alan.
Mm-hmm. How's that relationship? How were you as a big brother? I loved being a big sister.
Yeah.
I never had any sort of jealousy around having new siblings.
Yeah.
So I'm so lucky for that.
How many siblings do you have, Jackie?
I have 2 younger sisters and an older brother and an older sister. Now, my older brother and sister didn't live in the same house there, but myself and my 2 younger sisters, we did.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Yeah. My brother, Alan, is 4.5 years younger than me. And because of that, I was kind of a third parent to him growing up. My parents didn't speak a lot of English. And so there's a story that I often tell about he and I being left home alone when he was an infant. My parents went out somewhere to run an errand, and I didn't know this, but they asked the neighbors to check on me. And so I came downstairs to answer the front door and left my brother in his bassinet upstairs. And I think I might have brought it downstairs, but just behind the door, and then opened the door with a hammer in my hand, to protect him.
Yeah.
And then the neighbors went back and said, yeah, they're okay. And it's been like that for many, many years of our lives. But I think in the last 7 years or so, since he got married, left his job at Blackstone, he and I have grown together a lot, and the things he's accomplished this year are just incredible. He sold $18.7 billion worth of industrial property back to Blackstone this year, or it's going to close this month, I think. And, we've been going through this ordeal with my mom together, and he's taught me so much about being a son at this time, which is ironic because my mom and I were always really close. She and I were just very close, and maybe our personalities were more similar than my dad and my brother. So it's hard now, to begin to let go of her. Yeah.
Yeah. I had to let go of my grandmother, who raised me quite a bit. Had a lot to do with raising me.
Yeah.
And yeah. Tell me about the relationship with your children, and tell me about. Do you find that the lessons that you're teaching them now will be the same as, right? I think lessons evolve, but I tend to believe that there are some core lessons that we get taught from the time we're born that we continually have to be mindful of.
Yeah. I think I want to make sure I have your question right, Jackie. The lessons that I'm teaching them today, are those the ones that they're going to live on with in the future?
Yes.
I think so. But I don't think in a very direct sense. I think Tyler, for example, has learned so much about human nature and how people operate at a young age. He's 13 now. And a lot of that's through observation at school. But I think he has a sense of how people should operate from Rebecca and me. I think Rebecca and I working together really sets a high sense of duty to ourselves, to our company, to our family, and that there's a real balance between all these pieces of life. And our children all have a sense of, we'd always rather be with them, but we have to be on a conference call, or we need to be in Sonoma or at the Tilden, and Savannah is the one that's grown up the fastest, being the youngest. So today, knock wood, she's walking out of her school and over to the swim and tennis place, and her older sister Sienna will do that. We'll walk her over there, with the girls, I feel like I have a lot less influence than Rebecca. I think that Rebecca's such a powerful role model for them, and they gravitate towards her. And I'm maybe the cord cutter, just helping them self-actualize, keep pursuing their own passions. And a lot of it is through Mom, I think. I think most of it. I think I'm sort of an appendage.
I have one more question that I'm interested in.
Yes.
If you, I don't know that it's all that original, but if you could go back to the 18-year-old Steve, what would you tell him?
Slow down. Yeah, slow down. I don't have any regrets because, I'm so blessed is how I feel. And at 18, I was just entering Georgetown, and that ended up being an incredibly good school and good fit for me. And it began some of the process of slowing down. But some things happen when you're a child that make you grow up fast.
Yes.
And I had some of those experiences at 12. And my dad had those experiences. My grandfather had those experiences too, And I was in a real hurry starting at a pretty young age to be independent, financially and so at 18, I was in a rush, to develop physically, primarily because I was small going into high school, 4'11", 88 pounds. And so I was working out a lot, putting on all this weight, eating a ton, and that kind of mentality of, I would apply that same strategy to, say, money, right, or advancement in my career, and that went through my 20s, and I did well, but I think I also missed some things on the way. I think slowing down may have allowed me to be a better husband during the Great Recession or earlier on with our children, to be a better son, yeah.
Yeah, I could talk to you all day. It's so easy.
Thank you so much, Jackie. You're a real superstar in our organization, and I really enjoyed the connection today, especially today of all days, with you, and just being present with you today. And we'll catch you on the next episode, and hope you keep listening to the podcast. And really, thank you for being so open and honest on this conversation.
It's my pleasure. It was easy. I have a connection with you too, so I'm really grateful to be here, and it's been a great experience. Thank you for having me.